Thanks for the invitation, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. We'll be talking about my experience with network knowledge to action in support of marine spatial planning implementation in Brazil. So perhaps just a brief introduction here of the main topic. My research departs from the need to rightfully place ecosystem capacity, social justice, and inclusiveness in blue economy discourse is not something that is not often looked is the social equity pillar. So I'm really concerned about how these developments in blue economies are taking shape, as well as other social marine sciences are following up how this is unfolding. Also, we're going to talk a lot about the role of area-based marine management in sustainable development. This UN Environment recent report have found that the area-based approach crosscuts, their outcomes crosscuts many SDGs. So it's really an approach to be looking for. And MSP is well fit within these approaches. Also, I'd like to highlight the potential of transdisciplinary solutions to face complexity in environmental governance overall, but also just sustainability transition management or sustainability experiments, social innovation labs, learning networks, knowledge networks, and other terms that refers to groups of people with different backgrounds that comes together to find solutions for pretty complex governance situations. So let's talk a bit about the opportunity context for inter-network-led transformation of area-based governance in Brazil. Based on the theory of transformative agency conceptualized in a multi-level governance context, this paper in Frontiers of Marine Science built on our recent interdisciplinary research in Brazil to explore the opportunities for transformation in dynamic, complex, multi-level field of ocean governance in Brazil. So for each of the three case studies, this paper characterized their respective phases in the transformation from a fragmented sectoral to an integrated and ecosystem-based ocean governance regime. For instance, in 2018, we hypothesized that the Brazilian national level ocean governance system was on the brink of undergoing major transformation, but while the new ultra-conservative federal government that is in place since early 2019 has caused much backlash in environmental policy and democratic structures, and hence further restrain major innovations, I argue that the recommendations derived from the application of the theory of transformative agency in this paper remains valid. In other words, it is critical to lower the resilience of the dominant system by convening activities and giving sense to collective action, encouraging actors and mobilizing resources. And this is partly what I've done with many other colleagues in a program that I will talk about in a minute. So in this another paper in ocean and coastal management, we compile and review documents and minutes from selected ocean governance forums in Brazil to unveil the genesis of an MSP arena in the country. We had identified several phases from the inception of the idea in 2011 to a phase of resistance toward the idea of MSP through to the blossoming of an MSP agenda in Brazil, and finally a later and quiescent phase when the agenda seemed to become stagnated in the articulation and framing of MSP pre-planning phase. So you must mind that Brazil has been undergoing political turmoil and institutional instability for some time, and of course this affects many other policy agendas in the country. So these are the high-level public forums whose documents were investigated with a focus on the identification of reported challenges and opportunities for MSP in Brazil. So hundreds of meeting minutes were coded and analyzed through to identify what MSP has been all about in such forums. So in this and subsequent papers of this series, we are using the interactive governance analytical framework, whereby governability is the total capacity that a socio-political entity has to govern a system, A functional governability analysis therefore encompasses careful consideration of 5 dimensions, 1 to 5 in the center column. In this paper, we coded all reported challenges and opportunities against their associated functional governability dimensions. This analysis enabled the identification of critical functional governability narratives for advancing MSP in Brazil. We'll come back on each of these in our conclusions later, but just after we check the results of another paper of the series on the Brazilian MSP that also uses the same governability lenses. So in this paper published only a couple of weeks ago, entitled Crafting a Sustainability Transition Experiment for the Brazilian Blue Economy, we reflect on the required conceptual elements and programmatic indicators for national and marine spatial planning implementation as a major operational driver of a blue economy pathway for Brazil. And we also explore which ways the perceptions from high-level federal government authority that are directly involved with MSP innovation in the country can be used to inform the co-design of an ocean sustainability transition experiment in Brazil. So the paper focuses in the analysis of perceptions from representatives of the Shared Use of Marine Environment Working Group, which gather formally appointed members or think tanks of federal government ministries with the objective of discussing and proposing guidelines for advancing Brazil's MSP at the exclusive economic zone level. So we designed a focus group protocol and held 13 sessions, focus group sessions with 12 out of 17 ministries that are involved with the working group, about 28 participants. And the focus group protocol focused in prototyping a MSP-based ocean sustainability transition experiment for the country, which encompassed the envisioning of key conceptual elements of a blue economy vision and also outlining the principal indicators of a transition experiment. So we used a slightly adapted version of the evaluative scheme for sustainability transition experiments proposed by laureates and collaborators after a review of over 60 cases of social innovation processes around the globe in areas such as food, climate, and energy transitions. This model was designed to be generic, comprehensive, operational, and formative. Hence, we adapted it for use in an ocean policy context. So this is how it looks like. We have here a large sheet of paper in front of the group, printed with the evaluative model layout and adapted to include at the center the visioning of what the blue economy elements ought to be for our informants, followed by citations related to inputs, processes, outputs, and outcomes from the experiments they are envisioning. So all 471 citations from 13 focus groups were digitalized and analyzed through open coding or selective coding using specific models, criteria set, and indicators. Some results. This radar graph illustrates what the key conceptual elements of a future ocean economy vision ought to be for the country in our informants' perspective. The most cited elements were that such a vision should go beyond government to be truly nested within long-term state economic policy and value the environmental viability of the economy. Therefore, many informants highlight the need for improved governance frameworks and strategic planning, better able to engage and sensitize stakeholders and prioritize ongoing innovations, including valuing the bioeconomy, combating marine pollution, and diversifying the energy metrics towards a low-carbon society through technological development. A focus on advancing resources exploitation as well was really present, such as fisheries, tourism, algae, agriculture, genetic and mining resources extraction. Well, it is noteworthy that social equity was not pointed as an important element of Brazil's blue economy, nor there were many mentions to transparency, ecosystem-based management, social license, and science and technology, amongst other aspects deemed important in truly sustainable and equitable blue economies. So when we look at the most cited evaluative criteria or indicators mentioned as critical to foster an MSP-based sustainability experience in Brazil, we find two major future solution narratives cross-cutting our informants' perceptions. The principal narrative enacts that the need for outcomes, such as actionable knowledge, in turn also linked to inputs of specific expertise in the experiment. This reveals a largely technocratic view of advancing MSP through contributions from spatial data scientists and economists, for instance. A second narrative enacts the need for inputs such as financial support for generating structural, social, institutional change outcomes related to management through novel collaborative processes with appropriate methodologies. It is noteworthy also, though, that not much consideration was placed on accountability, intra- and intergenerational equity, transparency, and other critically important indicators, as you can see here from the low frequency of those citations. Well, some of our concluding remarks. The analysis of documents from key environmental governance forums and the exploration of the perceptions from high-level government think tanks on the co-design of a sustainability transition experiment rendered essential insights for each of the 5 functional ocean governability dimensions. These are critical narratives for building Brazil's capacity to govern the ocean and includes, well, on the presence and quality of interactions, information, sharing, co-learning, collaborative learning, and adaptiveness. We found that it is critical to streamline cross-network knowledge exchange to improve the nascent MSP arena. And a sustainability transition experiment may promote a process framework for improving the overall presence and quality of area-based governance-related knowledge exchange. Concerning the fitness of governing elements, in other words, the actions, instruments, and assumptions, how these elements are match or fit to properties of the systems that are being governed, such as the social and natural systems, its dynamics, scales, complexities, and diversity. How is this match? So we found that it is critical to further understand the institutional dynamics that are impeding policy integration. Much more research needs to be put on this question. A sustainability experiment can support the policy innovators' quest for integrated governance through imagination and rationalization of appropriate or radical institutional change. So on the responsiveness of governing modes, I'm talking about self-governance, which is led by civil society, or collaborative governance, co-led by multiple organizations, and also hierarchical governance led by government authorities. We argue for the importance of achieving a more symmetrically responsive ocean governance arena, whereby different state powers are also in synergy, and because in Brazil there is some activities ongoing in Parliament and others by civil society and others by the federal government. So we need more symmetrically responsive approaches. And in this regard, the experiment may provide space for streamlining such disparate governance responses into co-evolutionary pathways. On the performance of governing other orders, so the 3 orders. The first order is the day-by-day problem solving and opportunity creation in governance. The second order would be institutional building new policies, and the third order thinking about the meta values, norms, and principles that governs the marine spatial planning agenda. So we recognize the need to promote coordinated scaling of innovative principle-based policy building. Need to come together different places, subnational case studies that are working and finding solution. We need to come together and coordinate the scaling through of these innovations. And of course, the experiment help us measure improvements in the performance of innovative governance attempts. In relation to the enabling and restrictive role of power relations, I'm talking about inclusiveness, representativeness, participation. Well, it's very important to strengthen critical but proactive civil society participation at multiple interrelated area-based ocean governance innovation frontlines. And a sustainability experiment may allow for involved parties to confront asymmetric power relations in the shaping of a more environmentally sustainable and socially equitable ocean economy. And just briefly, I'm part of this network, which is called Painel MAR, Brazilian Future Ocean Panel. We have 8 teams, research action teams that are working through transdisciplinary approaches. And we usually gather in Brasilia, the capital city, to go to parliament, do in situ interviews with using transdisciplinary methodologies. And some of these papers are also part of our thinking in relation to the practice in this program, the Brazilian Oceanic Horizon program. So you can find more information on our website. And thanks so much for the opportunity of being here. And I hope you like it, our slides. Thank you.